My name is Lynette Owens, and I'm the Vice President of Global Consumer Education and Marketing at Trend Micro. I'm also the founder of our Internet Safety for Kids and Families program. And tonight's session is brought to you both by our organization in partnership with PTO Today. So thank you so much for being with us. And tonight's session is also being recorded. So if you would like a copy of the recording after this evening, please reach out to the person that organized this event for your school community. And if you are that person, please reach out to the representative from Trend Micro that you worked with to get the information for tonight's event. So I want to welcome those of you who are here tonight. And as you can see, we have nice representation from around the country. This is one of several events that we've been hosting throughout this academic year. And we're actually in the second year of our virtual format for parents. And it's been a wonderful way to stay connected as parent communities. So again, there's a sign-in sheet at the chat, so please let us know that you were here. I encourage you through the night to submit your questions through the Q&A function. Please don't put it in the chat because it might get lost as the chat proceeds. So please put it in the Q&A. And again, this session is being recorded, but we will make it available by request only. If there are any members of your community that were not able to attend this evening, we still are hosting 2 more events, actually 3 more events between now and the end of May. And I will show you a website later where you can see the calendar of those sessions. And finally, at the exit of the event, when you close out Zoom, you should be seeing a web page, which is actually a very brief survey to get your feedback about tonight. So I would like to get to know you a little bit better. And as you're answering these questions, I will do an introduction of myself. And I'd love to know, how old is your oldest child? Please use the polling function to answer this question. Are they A, 5 years old or younger, B, 6 to 10 years old, C, 11 to 14 years old, or D, 15 years or older? I have 2 kids. Both of them now are in high school. I have a senior who's about to graduate and a freshman. But I've been doing this work for 14 years and learned a lot through the process of raising them and the evolution of technology and how technology has shaped family life, childhood, education. So it's been really a wild, fun time to do that, challenging, of course. So it looks like we have a tie. It looks like most of you are either in that 6 to 10 or 11 to 14 years old age range of your oldest children. So a few of you have some that are older. That's great. I'm in the same bucket with you. So we're going to touch on a lot of things tonight that I think will have application for all of these age ranges. But a second question I wanted to ask you is, what are you most interested in discussing tonight? What are you most interested in discussing tonight? Is it A, managing screen time for my kids? B, helping them stick to age-appropriate content? C, dealing with online bullying or hate? D, ideas for positive uses of the internet? Or E, not sure, just here to learn something new? A, B, C, D, or E. Having done this session in this format throughout the pandemic. There is one of these answers that tends to rise to the top and a second that tends to rival it, depending on the ages of your oldest children. So based on what I'm seeing here in your answers, I think it isn't too surprising. So I'll just give that another minute for you to answer. What are you most interested in discussing? All right. I'm going to end the poll here. And it looks like most of you are concerned about screen time. And that is not really a big surprise. That tends to be the one that rises to the top. The second is actually the B, helping my kids stick to age-appropriate content. But given the fact that most of you have children in those older age ranges, I'm not surprised that this was a little bit lower. So it looks like there's interest across all 5 topics, and that's great. We're actually going to touch upon everything here tonight, but this gives me a good sense of where I should spend a little bit more time versus others. All right. So again, if you're just joining us this evening, please let us know in the chat where you are dialing in from. And there is a link to sign in and let us know that you were here. We're able to let your schools know who attended from your particular school. So a lot has changed these last 2 years, and I can't imagine that we could begin to finish that list of what exactly changed for us. We could start writing that list. But what we know to be true about technology and kids is there's a lot that did not change. Number one, children still need our guidance when it comes to the uses of technology, particularly because you may have said yes to something that you would not have said yes to only because of the pandemic, and you wanted them to be able to stay connected to other people. So perhaps you said yes to TikTok or Instagram a little bit sooner than you would have. Maybe you bought the phone a little earlier than you were planning. That might be true, but children still very much need our guidance because the risks are still there and for them, but so are the benefits. And hopefully, as you reflect on the last 2 years, you might consider the question, what did change with my relationship to technology, with my children's relationship to technology, that actually was a good thing? Because that might be something, hopefully you'll continue to use technology in those ways. And the fact that good digital citizenship and teaching our children how to use technology in safe, responsible, and positive ways is more paramount than ever. And when we talk about digital citizenship, what we mean are certainly discussing the risks, what they are and how to avoid them. So safety and security are important parts of digital citizenship. But so is digital literacy. Even if I teach my child the importance of, what a strong password is, or how to protect my private, or why privacy is so important, do they know how to actually protect it? Do they know what two-factor authentication is, or where to find the privacy settings, or how to report another user on a social networking site that's been troublesome? Do they know how? Third is about how we behave. It's very important that we couple conversations about technology use with regard to the rules of those online spaces where they're spending time. And it's important not only because it's the right thing to do, but also because on the internet, everything is recorded. So what kind of digital footprint are you leaving behind in how you behave in these spaces? And finally, very often when we talk to children about technology use, it can often look like a long list of what not to do. It's very important that we also couple our conversations with how they actually should be using technology, ways that could be positive for them, for others, and for the world around them. So we've got to remember that good digital citizenship is as much about what not to do with technology as it is about what we should be doing with technology. So the way we like to organize this complex topic is around 4 areas. The first is on being online. So being online means how to make sure that we're setting up the right environment, setting up the rules, and setting a very good example for our kids. The next thing is around being safe, and specifically, how do we protect their privacy? How do we teach them to protect their personal information? And how do we teach them to even protect their physical selves? It's about being kind, and not only in terms of how we treat others, but also thinking about how we direct that kindness to ourselves. Very often in spaces like social media, as we know and has been made public about some of those platforms, it can be harmful. It can be anxiety producing. It can be detrimental to our mental health. So how do we direct kindness, again, not only just towards others, but to ourselves? And finally, how being savvy. How do we teach good habits and encourage good uses? Maria, I'm actually getting a message here that they're unable to see you, so I'm going to spotlight you. Please let me know if you can see the ASL interpreter now. You able to see Maria? Let me know in the chat. Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Okay, I apologize for that. So let's start with setting up the environment. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we've been in this situation coming through a pandemic. The only thing I will stress is that in terms of setting up the environment, there are 2 different things that we think about. The first is for your children's physical health. The second is around the technology that you're using in the home. So on physical health, I will just say that if your children are using tech a lot for homework and as well as just for entertainment, try to make sure they're taking care of their eyes. We do work closely with the Digital Wellness Lab, which is out of the Children's Hospital, Boston, and Harvard Medical School. And pediatricians started seeing a lot more children over the last 2 years complaining about things that they had not complained about before. Things like neck aches and eye strain and headaches. So it's really important to invest, if you can, if you know your children are on screens a lot, on something like blue light blocking glasses. They don't require a prescription. You can get them on Amazon. Think about something like that for your kids, even for yourselves, or at a minimum, having them take breaks at very regular intervals. Every 30 minutes, look at something 30 feet away for 30 seconds, look out the window, and rest the eyes. But make sure that seating and lighting and getting up and moving is something you're encouraging regularly with your children, because I think we can often overlook this part of healthy technology use. But the second part, as I mentioned, is the technology piece. So Um, we are obviously Trend Micro is a technology company. We are in the cybersecurity space. My work, though, is very focused on education of young people and of parents. So we think this is a really important basic. Some of this is very basic information that every family should know. And the first one is the way that you've set up your home network. Some of you might be working from home. Some of you might be uh, using pieces of tech, using a laptop or a desktop that contains sensitive information for your family. So one thing we like to consider is, first of all, if your children obviously are on the same network, make sure that the password that came with it has been changed. Very often people buy a router and it comes with a default password and they never have changed it. So please make sure that that's something you're doing regularly, just as you do for your Facebook page, your bank account, anything that requires a password. The next thing that I would recommend with your home network, and actually before I proceed, I think we might switch to Judy. Okay, let's switch to Judy here.
Going to switch interpreters and re-spotlight. Thank you.
Yep. So another thing I would recommend is that if you are working from home and you are sharing that network with your kids, you might want to consider putting your devices on the main part of the network, your Wi-Fi, your router, and putting your children's devices on the guest network. Okay, most of the newer routers allow for you to separate your network in this way. The reason we recommend this is because if your children ever accidentally click on something, download something accidentally, and it, they've perhaps gotten a virus on their own device, by separating the network in this way, you will protect your devices from anything that they have done by accident or otherwise. So that's something we like to recommend, especially for those of you who are working from home with, let's say, a work-owned laptop or device. We highly recommend this. Using a Wi-Fi extender is really only, relevant if you need to be in one part of the home and you want to be in a separate place from another user in your home, and the Wi-Fi connection isn't so strong in all parts of the home. So the Wi-Fi extender can help you improve that connection. And just to keep peace in the house, have conversations with your kids about when they're going to be online, streaming Netflix or playing Fortnite while you're trying to be on a Zoom call. It can be a little bit dicey when everyone's trying to use the bandwidth all together. So we highly recommend just have those conversations and see if you can't stagger time. Now, with regard to security, we recommend that you use security software on every device that connects to the internet. And, obviously Trend has a product for this, but if you do a search online for the top 10, the top most reputable security software options out there, you'll find plenty of them. So make sure that you have it installed, it's up to date, you're doing your updates frequently, especially now, because during the pandemic, the cyber criminals have been busy at an all-time high, and they know that we were online and continue to be online at levels never before seen. So they're taking advantage of that fact. When you do finally use the security software, if you already have it on, make sure the firewall is on. Very simply, this is watching the kinds of traffic that are coming in and out of your device and making sure that it's allowing that which is safe and not those things that are not safe. Strong passwords is obvious, and I'll show you a trick in a minute of things you could do to encourage strong password use in your home. Most of you have kids that are much older, so I won't belabor that too long, but if you know of other children, if you do have younger children, this is a great way to teach the concept of good practices around strong passwords. We'll talk about that in a minute. Multi-factor authentication. Sometimes it's called two-factor authentication. Sometimes it's called two-step verification. It depends on the app that you're using. Make sure that is on for your own devices, but also your children's. If they're using Roblox, if they're using TikTok, if they're using Instagram, make sure this is on. And the reason for this is very often people aren't using very strong passwords. And we also know from research that some of the data that is most stolen by cyber criminals are email addresses and passwords. They are floating around the dark web and they're being, sold and exchanged and unbeknownst to you. So let's say someone gets a hold of your password. Well, if you have multi-factor authentication on, it acts as a second lock, meaning the person would need to get a secondary code that's either texted to your phone or emailed to you in order to unlock the account. So we highly, highly recommend, again, not just your accounts, but your children's as well. Make sure this is on. And finally, if you are not connecting from home, if you're at a public place like a library, airport, coffee shop, try to use a virtual private network to connect to the internet and not just connect to public Wi-Fi with no protection. This ensures that whatever information you're sending out to another site, let's say you're shopping and you've entered in a credit card number and it's now being sent to that website. This ensures that it won't be intercepted by any people with bad intentions. So again, many good options for virtual private networks out there. Just do a search and you'll see lots of great options. Some are free and some are paid. They have different features associated with them. Finally, on setting up the environment, it's really important that you update everything as soon as you can. Again, including your children's iPads and phones, make sure that everything's getting updated frequently. We've seen a lot more activity over the course of the pandemic because oftentimes the updates are plugging security holes. Sometimes the updates are just cosmetic. They're just trying to improve the app or game in some way. But very, very often it's to plug security holes. So make sure you're updating and your children are learning to do that on a regular basis. This was the tip on passwords that I mentioned earlier. The longer a password is, the stronger it is. So one way to think about this is actually, rather than thinking of a word, and never use a word in the dictionary. Cyber criminals have already figured out how to automatically throw every word in the dictionary against an account to try and crack it open. So never use any words you find in the dictionary. Instead, think of a sentence and use the first letter of each word in the sentence as your password. Throw in a number, a special character, some uppercase letters. And this is something I think with kids, especially younger ones, it's a good practice because they can come up with a fun sentence that they can remember. And then they can learn, the alphabet, learning the first letter of each of those words. For those of you with older kids who start to use many more websites, many more apps, we would recommend using a password manager. There are a lot of different options. Again, out there. If you do a search, Trend Micro has a password manager, but again, I think Google has one as well. Think about using a password manager because you won't have to remember lots and lots of passwords. You just have to remember one in order to help you get into all those accounts. Finally, back up everything. Many of you might be using iPhone or iCloud backup or Google backup, and that's great. But we also recommend having the hard drive backup as well, in addition to a cloud-based backup if you can, because if either one of those ever gets compromised, you have a backup to your backup. Also, never store your backup drive near the actual device that you're backing up. Put it in a different part of the home. Don't keep them in the same place. So some of you, not too many of you said this, but I'll just go through some of this very, very quickly. Some of you had talked about being concerned about managing screen time. And then a smaller number of you said managing age-appropriate content. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this section, but you might be curious to know about some of these things. And there are tech tools out there that you can buy in addition to what you have already, meaning your child's devices and your own. But many times these tools already exist within the games, apps, and devices that you already own. Okay, so these tools can help you do things like manage screen time, even monitor what they're doing, limit who they can communicate with, and ensure that they're not seeing content that is inappropriate for them. So the first is iOS screen time. Are there any families out there who use iPhones? If you could put that in the chat. Anybody out there, an iPhone family? Any kids using iPads, iPhones, or even iPod touches? Yes. Usually we get a pretty good number of Apple families. Great. Anybody have heard of iOS screen time before? Okay. Fantastic. So I'll just say briefly that iOS screen time is a fantastic tool for your ability to limit the amount of time, the kinds of apps, and even who can communicate with your kids online. And if you aren't familiar with it and you are an Apple family, I would just recommend do a search on iOS screen time. But I'm showing you here that you'd basically set up your child with an iTunes account and connect it to yours in your family. Here you see an example on the screen. Those are my kids at the bottom there. It's my phone. And once you click on one of the children, you can see all the kinds of things that you can limit them from doing. It's really useful because you can see on a daily basis or on demand, you know, how much time they spent on this particular app versus a different one. You could set limits to say no more than an hour on YouTube and so on. But what I like most about tools like this is it should encourage conversation, right? Communication is one of the most important tools that you have as a parent to ensure that they're using technology in good, safe, responsible, and productive, positive ways. So the screen time can tell you a lot of things, but really at the end of the day, it's about what you plan on doing with that information as a parent. You know, if you know that maybe they're struggling with some schoolwork, but you also notice that they're spending a lot of time on YouTube, you know, that's probably going to trigger a conversation of, you know what, I think that you should probably not have the phone in your room. uh, during, when you're trying to do homework, or um, you know, maybe we need to limit the amount of time you're spending on a particular app. Maria, I'm just going to let Judy back in. I think she had an issue. Okay, I've let her back in. All right. Okay, so on screen time, I just encourage those of you who haven't seen it before, and your kids do use Apple, that you consider using screen time as a way to limit, maybe certainly inform you about what they're using their device for, but also if you feel that they need a little bit more nudging, you might want to restrict some of the types of apps that they're using or allowed to use, as well as put some time limits around other uses as well. Now, anybody else on the call, family, or your kids using Android devices? I know we had a lot of people say yes about Apple. Any Android families out there? Let us know in the chat. Yes. Yeah. Usually we get about, I would say 50-50 of our events. We notice that there's a lot of families out there who are both. We are hybrid homes where we have both Apple and Android in our homes. So if you're not already familiar, just like Apple's screen time, Google Family Link was launched, I want to say 4 years ago now. It's a free app that allows you to do a lot of the same things we just talked about. You can filter the kinds of apps that your child could download onto their Android device. You could limit the amount of screen time that they're having in general, but also on specific apps. And you could also track their location. I mean, you can do this in other ways through the mobile devices already, but these are some of the ways that Google Family Link works. So for your Android families, if you've not used something like this before, I would encourage you to consider Google Family Link. Obviously, both of these things I mentioned don't cost you anything. These are free. Anybody's kids like this app called YouTube? Unfortunately, YouTube is something that I don't imagine many kids have not ever looked at YouTube. So, there's a question in the chat here, and thank you, Denica, for your question. I would encourage in the future if you could put questions in the Q&A so that I don't miss them. But your question is this strictly a phone app, or does it work for tablets too? The Google Family Link is for all Android devices. So Family Link should work for anything that's using Android as its operating system. Okay, no problem, Denica. So for YouTube, if you are not familiar, earlier this year, late last year, they finally launched something that I have long been waiting for, and it's called the YouTube Supervised Account. In the past, if you wanted to make sure YouTube was a safe place for your kids, you either pointed them to YouTube for Kids, and that app was really designed for very, very young children. Those who are still in love with Elmo, although I still love Elmo, but you know what I mean. Or you let them go on the regular YouTube and you just cross your fingers that they wouldn't see anything inappropriate after watching the video that wasn't inappropriate. So they launched this concept to allow children of different age ranges to use YouTube in safer ways. So what you would do as a parent is you would need a Google account, and you would, when they go onto YouTube, you could set it up so you would select explore more, or most of YouTube. And what that's designed to do, based on which you pick, is allow them to see content, only content, that is okay for up to age 10, 11, if you choose Explore, up to age 14, 15, if you choose Explore More, and up to age 17, if you choose most of YouTube. What it basically does is restrict anything that's considered adult content that's 18 plus. So, but you still have the granularity to choose one of these settings based on your child's age and maturity and whatever you're comfortable with when it comes to them freely using YouTube. Okay. Here's a fun one. Who is using TikTok? Who has said yes to TikTok out there? Any kids using TikTok or begging you to use TikTok? Let me know in the chat. I know we usually see a lot of no's. We probably see more no's or not yet's. No way. Yeah, not surprising. I think we're seeing a lot of no's in here right now. Yeah. And yes, we see the occasional yes. So, TikTok is the way that YouTube and so many other apps were in their early days. But for those of you who said no, at some point, you're probably going to say yes once you feel that they're ready and they're old enough. Maybe you'll never say yes, but I would like to offer to you something that TikTok launched 2 years ago, right at the beginning of the pandemic, actually. And it's called TikTok Family Pairing. What this allows you to do is ease you and your children into the TikTok experience. And you will be able to set it up by going to a setting called Digital Wellbeing, select Family Pairing, and then you have to install TikTok on your device and then TikTok on their device. And you will designate your device as parent, as shown here on the screen. From that point, you will be able to limit certain things with your child's use of TikTok. You can decide how much time they can spend on it, whether or not they're allowed to see all content or not, and even who can communicate with them through this app. So this is a great way to ease you and your children into the TikTok experience before you say yes to the full TikTok experience. So this is something to consider for those of you who said no. If you want to finally say yes, and they've proven to you that they're responsible enough, consider starting the whole experience using TikTok Family Pairing. Okay. Instagram is probably the most heavily used, in addition to Snapchat, social networking app among youth. Anybody's kids using Instagram already or Snapchat? Just let me know. Okay. No, it sounds like some of you are sort of on the verge of considering it, and maybe you're not ready yet, and that's fine. But Instagram, they've been around a while, but they finally just this year launched a whole new set of features. The one that I'm most interested in is the one called supervision. And, I wish they had this in place when my kids started with it. But what I like about the concept is it's like family pairing, where you can ease them into the Instagram process. And you can, you can't really control a whole lot. I mean, other than seeing what they're doing, most of what you're able to do in terms of control is having the conversations with your kids about the kinds of persons they should be connecting with, who they should follow, or whom they should allow to follow them. and also about the kinds of content they are posting on it, the kinds of things they're saying on other people's posts, and so on. You know, it really, all of these tools are great, but they do not take the place of you as a parent and the kinds of conversations you'll have with them. But what I like about the supervision is, just like iOS settings, screen time, just like Google Family Link, these are tools that enable you to have information to have those conversations. So you are going to be able to see how much time they were spending on it by time of day of the week and so on. You could actually see who they're following and who's following them. You can't necessarily block it from happening. You can just be there to monitor. And if you see something troubling, it can help trigger the conversation you want to have with them. This is a kind of visibility that was not available before unless you were one of your child's connections in Instagram. But you know, that's also another way of doing this. But I think these apps are getting better at giving us the kinds of tools that will help us as parents make sure our children are having safe and positive experiences on these platforms. Anybody's kids like Roblox? Let me know in the chat there. Anybody understand what Roblox is? So Roblox is not a game. Roblox is a platform of games created by game developers. It's a community of people who play those games and build those games. And very often, I think we mistakenly think that it's 10-year-olds using Roblox. It is not. Yes, there are lots of 10-year-olds on Roblox, but there's a lot of older people there too. So what I'm going to show you right now is a quick video developed by Roblox showing you the kinds of settings that are available to you as a parent to make sure that that experience is safe. So just like with many other apps, you can begin to set privacy and security settings by entering a passcode. And you need that passcode to change anything going forward. So as you can see from the video, you can limit who's allowed to message your child or chat with them within an app. You can turn on things like two-step verification or who's allowed to do things like trading goods, virtual goods, and so on with them. So if you're not familiar with those settings in Roblox already and your kids are heavy users of it, I highly recommend you talk to them about it, take a look at it with them, encourage them to set these settings, or you can do it with them. Anybody's kids using Discord? No, there's a lot of no's to Discord, I think, too. And then there's a lot of what is Discord as well. So a little bit about Discord. They are an app that I would describe as a super messaging, like text messaging, app. But Discord actually has been around for a long time. It was mostly a place that very, very serious gamers hung out in communities. And what's really cool about Discord, and one of the reasons it rose to the top over the last 2 years during this pandemic, is because gamers could actually co-view. They could hang out by watching someone else as they were playing a video game and cheer them on. And people started using Discord to co-view movies at the beginning of the pandemic because Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, all of these other streaming apps had not had a feature of co-viewing at the beginning of the pandemic. So Discord is a place where people set up what's called servers. And a server is like what you would call a group chat. If you set up a group chat on your phone, that's kind of the same concept. So you can build a server and invite people to it. You could actually join other servers and hang out with people who have similar interests, like I like the Marvel Cinematic Universe or Harry Potter or so on. So servers can be private or you can be hanging out in public ones too. The thing about Discord is, as cool as it is, they're just getting caught up on the basic kinds of safety and privacy settings that all of the other apps that your kids love already have. I give them a lot of credit because they saw a huge rise in popularity that I'm not sure they expected. They started hiring a lot of experts and people to build these safety settings in there. And what I'm showing here is just screenshots of some of those settings. So, here's an example of who is allowed to message me in Discord, or who is allowed to add me as a friend, or I don't really like what this person is saying. I want to block them, or I want to report them, and so on. So they've definitely improved a lot over the last year. So if you're not familiar with Discord, your kids might be. Your kids might actually ask you if they could get on Discord at some point. Anybody's kids play gaming consoles like Xbox or PlayStation or Nintendo? Let me know in the chat. I will just say that, again, got better over the course of the pandemic. Xbox launched a new app called Xbox Family Settings. You don't even have to go to the gaming console. From your phone with this app, as your child is playing, they can request of you more time, and you can say yes or no from the app. I don't think there's a similar app yet for Nintendo that I am aware of, but I know that within every console, there are ways to limit the kinds of games that could be played on it by age. You can limit the kinds of websites that you could visit on those consoles, because many of them have browsers that go out to the internet. But in any case, I just want to make you aware that that screen time is something you can also limit within gaming consoles. And Trend Micro, as I said before, we're a technology company, and I've been doing this work for 14 years. I've been in the industry for 2 decades. And we decided, after doing this education work for 14 years, that we would direct some of our engineering resources to an app that is free to families called tmfamily.care. I would love for you to give it a try. Let us know how we can do better. But based on everything that you just saw, what we're trying to do is make it easy to do all in one place, rather than having to go to every single app and set those settings. This product is in its early stages. And so again, I encourage you to visit us at tmfamily.care, give it a try, give us your feedback. We built this with you in mind. We never intend to charge for it. This is just something that we feel is too important. Now, on setting the rules, I will just say this. When you're thinking about rules, we like to encourage you to think about these 5 dimensions. What are they allowed to use? When are they allowed to use it? How long are they allowed to use it? Where and with whom are they allowed to use it? And I'd love to hear from you in the chat. What are some rules that work really well for your family? If you could put it in the chat, I would greatly appreciate that. In our house, when we're talking to each other, I don't like it when my kids are looking at their phone while I'm trying to have a conversation with them. Phones need to be face down. If it's near them and we're trying to have a conversation, phones should be face down. What rules do you have in your family that work for you? Please let me know in the chat. Fantastic. Okay, time restrictions. Absolutely. When my kids were younger, I would say, no screen time till homework was done. And certainly none at the dinner table. None at the dinner table. Okay, great. Thank you, Shauna. No dinner time. Dinner time is no phones, and I totally agree with that. I think we need to be focused on each other at meals. Weekend use only for games. Wow. That's great, Nicole. I'm glad you're able to enforce that. I think that's great. Every family is going to have their own rules, and we'll talk a little bit about the implications of one family's rules being different from another family's rules. We'll talk about that later on. So with regard to screen time, many of you actually said that you were concerned about this. And, I think we need to rethink screen time and instead think about what it is we're doing with screens. So I'll explain what I mean about that in a minute. But there's a concept that we have adopted from the Digital Wellness Lab called the 24 hours rule when it comes to screen time. Okay. So the 24 hours rule is this concept of talking to your children. And actually, this is good for us as adults too, right? And having them understand there's only that many hours in a day. So let's go through this exercise. How many hours do you spend doing things that are good for your physical health, like sleeping or exercising, riding your bike, having meals or helping to prepare meals? How much time is that? And on top of that, how much time are you spending to support yourself as a learner? So how much time are you in school, doing homework, maybe practicing an instrument, anything that supports you as a learner? Now, on top of that, how much time are you spending doing things that support the relationships that are very important in your life? It could be playing games together. It could be visiting, talking on the phone. And when you think about all of these activities, these are all good things. These are all important things for us and our kids. But some of these things, many of them, regardless of the box, might actually involve screens. Increasingly homework, especially as your kids get older. They're not just on screens to watch videos of baby kittens or play Fortnite. So that's why I think it's important to rethink what screen time really means, because almost everything we do today involves a screen, and instead focus on whether or not that time is productive and healthy for us. So once your children go through this exercise with you, once you do this even for yourself, and you add up all these hours, there might be time left over. If there's time left over, then it is actually okay to use it for fun screen time, right? Now, if that number in orange, in that orange box, if that ends up being 4 hours, that does not mean you use the Xbox for 4 hours. Certainly not. And for younger kids, a concept here is maybe you give them options of what they can do with that screen time, some of which could be screens and some of which are not. But when you think about all of the other things in green, blue, and pink, you've done a lot of things that were already really good for you. It's okay to say okay. It's okay to say yes to screens with that time left over. All right. Now, even if you say yes to screens in this free time. Again, you don't have to use it the entire time. That's where your rules and the tech tools that we talked about come into play. Finally, on setting a good example, it's just a question for you all as parents. What example do we set when it comes to technology use? Are we behaving in ways that we expect our children to behave? And what rules do we have for ourselves so that our own screen time use is healthy as well? Do you have any rules for yourselves? If you do, put it in the chat. Do any of you charge your phone next to your bed at night, or do you put it in another place? Let me know in the chat. What rules do you have for yourself? Oh, that's great. You have a time limit. That's a good one, Jennifer. I would love to do that. I need to work on that myself. All right. On being safe, I think this is something that this probably worries parents a lot. It worries me a lot. I'm sure it worries you as well with regard to privacy. But I want to give you a way to think about online privacy and how you could talk to your kids about it as well. So we used to go into schools. We used to have these conversations. We do a different session for students. And it was one of my favorite parts of the presentation. So what I will say about privacy here to you is that we certainly should be using privacy settings wherever they are available, because they're not by default set in the way that we want. I'm showing you here Fortnite, and this is where you would set the privacy settings in Fortnite. Make sure it's set to the level that you want, because the way that the internet is now, especially with free apps and games, it requires us to give up a lot of personal information. These companies trade, their currency is our personal information. And so it is not in their interest to set privacy settings at the highest levels. There are two exceptions to this: Instagram and TikTok, and actually TikTok first and then Instagram, has decided that for any users, you have to be 13, so between the ages of 13 and 16, users of TikTok and Instagram, their privacy settings will be set at the highest levels by default. That is not true of other apps yet that I know of, but I just want you to be aware of that when you finally say yes. So use privacy settings because they will protect you from the people you don't know. Make sure you share that with your kids. We all know that, right? But here's something else about privacy. Very often when we download a new app, we see a whole lot of legal text, so we scroll right past it. And at the very bottom, we skip to the button that says, I accept or I agree, because we just want to get going. What we're skipping over, though, and what we're actually agreeing to, is a clause that is true of basically every free app that's out there. I'm showing you Instagram here, but this would be the same with TikTok and everybody else. And that clause says, in simple terms, you own whatever you do on this app, everything you post, everything you say, but you give us the right to use that information whenever, wherever, forever. That is actually what we are agreeing, one of the many things that we agree to in these legal paragraphs that we often skip over and hit I accept. And the reason that those companies require that is because they didn't charge us to use the app. Again, our actions, everything we click on, search, watch, download, tap on, every single action is being tracked by the companies whose apps we use. So when we tell children, please be careful about what you're doing on the internet because there really is no privacy, that is what we mean. Privacy settings protect us from those that we don't know, but privacy settings do zero, do nothing to protect us from the companies whose apps and games we use because we agree to this condition. And when I have that conversation with students, it gets them pretty fired up. You know, they realize now when we're telling you, just assume nothing online is really private. This is why. Everything is being tracked, everything we do. And some people will say, for those of you who might be more technical in the audience, they'll say, well, what if I use some kind of way to mask what I'm doing? Well, you know, there's that happens to a certain degree. For example, when you use a browser like Google Chrome or Apple's Safari, they give you an option to use their browser in private browsing mode. Okay, that's great. That means Apple is not tracking anything. They don't track your history. They're not putting any cookies. That's fine. But that has nothing to do with the website you're visiting. The website you're visiting is still tracking all kinds of things of what you're doing once you get there. So, you know, I think it's really important that many companies will claim that they're the most private, they're protecting your privacy, but let's be real. Everything's being tracked about us. You know, on cybercrime, I would just say this on hackers trying to get our personal information. They're not trying to get your kids' personal information unless they have massive bank accounts and so on. But criminals go where the people go, and your kids are in those places where lots of people are, like social media, like search engines, and so on. And cyber criminals will use all kinds of tricks to get you to believe something, click on it, or give up personal information, thinking you're getting one thing while you're really not, and you may actually be downloading malicious software unbeknownst to you. So one thing I would say, as we said earlier, is again, make sure your children's devices have security software on it. I'm talking about phones as well as phones, iPads, laptops, and so on. But also, another thing that's really important is your children actually have a great sense of suspicion. They have healthy skepticism. Every classroom I've been in, when I asked a child, have you ever seen something suspicious pop up online? And almost always 100% of the hands go up. So there's something telling them that, I'm not sure this is something I can trust. So encourage that sense of skepticism. That's very healthy to have. And finally, if they accidentally click on something or do something that they think has caused a problem, maybe they think they downloaded a virus, maybe they were connected to your home network and they downloaded this virus, which now could impact every device in the home. Make sure the lines of communication are open and that without judgment, they can come to you and let you know. You need to know, because if in fact they've done that, There could be something lurking on that system or on your home network that's going to put your other devices at great risk. And for those of you who work from home, or you've got a laptop that's got, tax filing information or family photos you could never replace, make sure they're telling you. And if you feel concerned, there's a couple things you can do. Trend Micro has a free tool called House Call, housecall.trendmicro.com. You can do a free scan to see if there is, in fact, any kind of malicious software already on the device. If you have someone who takes care of your home computers, take it to them to have it looked at. But again, make sure your children know that they can come to you if something goes wrong. You want to avoid any kind of damage or harm to your own home and family. This is my last poll question for the night. Let me ask you this third question, and I'm going to guess that there's going to be a mix of answers here. So using the polling option, let me know, do any of your kids have their own cell phone? A, yes. B, no. C, not yet, but soon. Or D, not for a few more years. Is it A, B, C, or D? All right. I figured we might see the answers coming out this way. All right, I'm going to end the poll here and share with you. So if I added up all the no's, not yet's, and not for a few more years, yes still wins at 56%. And the rest of you, you're saying no now, but eventually you obviously will be saying yes. So that's great. I expected that based on the age ranges of your children. So I just want to have this one conversation about phones, and specifically one of the features that every kid loves the most about the phone, and that is the camera. And we all know you can have really great fun and do wonderful things with the camera. Kids have fun with filters and doing funny things with their faces on selfies, capturing video, people they love, maybe a family pet, and that's great. And they should continue to do that, and you should continue to encourage that. Okay, couple things about the camera. Number one, when you get a phone for the first time, geolocation is on by default for the camera. Okay, so in your settings, whether it's an Android phone or an Apple device, you can go in and turn off geolocation for the camera. Why would you do that? Well, if you have it on, if you keep it on, every time you take a picture, every photo is getting something called metadata attached to it. It's a superset of data that includes the time that you took the photo, the place, the exact place on Earth, meaning latitude, longitude, the actual place on Earth that you took the picture, and so on. And if you post that photo later on social media, someone could easily take a copy of the photo and figure out that metadata. If you say that you took that in your bedroom, someone could easily figure out exactly where you live. So my recommendation for those who have not said yes to a phone yet, and if this concerns you, go into the settings and turn off geolocation services for the camera, okay? If you don't like that option. If you don't like the fact that that's being tracked about your pictures. The second thing I want to encourage you to think about is that we do work closely with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And although their work is mostly around strangers, trying to groom them, strangers trying to coerce them, to send them, pictures to those people, or inappropriate kind of pictures, we have seen an increase, especially over the last 2 years, in those kinds of images that are self-produced. Kids themselves taking pictures that they would not want the whole world to see of themselves. I want to encourage you as parents, even if you've already said yes to the phone, but certainly for those of you who have not yet said yes to a phone, please have this conversation with your children that they should never feel pressured to take an image like that of themselves. I know that among those younger, this generation, it feels like a way of being close with someone to exchange those kinds of images. But there's a lot of problems with it. Number one, taking an image like that and you're underage is technically a felony. The production, distribution, and possession of those kinds of images is technically a felony. But children are not going to be prosecuted the way that an adult might be for the same thing. However, even the act of taking the photo already could put them at risk, even if they never send that kind of picture to anyone. If their device is being automatically backed up to the cloud, then already another copy is out there. And if they lost their phone, or if something happens and your backup is hacked, there's a lot of risk they're putting themselves under. And I think the second thing is that, so that's really important that you have that conversation, to never feel pressured to take an image like that, because once they take it, they're already putting themselves at risk for it getting out everywhere. I was asked by a father many years ago a really great question related to this. Okay, the phone is typically in your name. You pay the bill, you the adult. And he asked me in a room of 200 other parents and said, my child, he's a great kid. A lot of people like him, very charismatic because he's just nice to everybody. But what if somebody sends him one of those pictures? The phone bill's in my name. What should I do? So my advice to you is this. Make sure you, first of all, have a proactive conversation with your child, that if they ever do get one like that, any image that's troubling in any way, shape, or form, they need to come tell you, and then delete it. Okay? Communicate and take an action. And then you as a parent, if the image, especially if it's of another child that might actually be from their school, and you feel comfortable enough, perhaps you know the parents of that child, perhaps you could contact the parents of the child to say, just so you know, this is out there. Many times people are not comfortable doing that. And so, I would recommend reporting it either to the school that it's happened. Don't send the image. Just alert them that it's happened, because you have no idea who else might have gotten it. And if there is an investigation, then they're going to know that this image was taken here and sent over here. They're going to know that it went to your son anyway. And so that is my advice to you if this ever happens. Hopefully this never does, but these are the kinds of conversations I think are really important to have when you are giving your child a very powerful tool in the form of a phone that fits in your pocket. There's so much power and responsibility that comes with it as well. On gaming, I will just ask this question. Anybody have kids who struggle to separate from the game when you tell them 10 more minutes? Yeah? You ever hear that? But mom, dad, I'm in the middle of, can I just finish this level? Right? So what I will say is this, with gaming, number one, it's very social now. Almost every game is social. So use the privacy settings so they're only connecting with people you're comfortable with. Consider whether or not they should be using headphones. I think for kids who are a little bit younger, it might be a good idea to not allow the headphones so you can hear the kinds of conversations going on between them and the other people they're playing against. It can also help some of the language that can go on between kids that starts to go pretty bad after a while. To make sure when they know you're able to hear it, they might temper their language a bit. And finally, if you have a child who struggles to separate from the game, you could either use some of the tools we talked about, timers that say, and let them know 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes, it's going to cut off. But you could also consider games that have a time limit. One that I'd like to talk about is Rocket League. Rocket League is just, they drive a car around and try and push a big ball into a soccer net. It's basically playing soccer with cars. And eventually your time just runs out. So there's lots of great games like that. I'm a big fan of a resource called Common Sense Media. I don't know if anyone is familiar with it. I just put it in the chat. Common Sense Media is a nonprofit organization that reviews apps, games, even movies, books, based on what's the content of them, but then what to look out for, even beyond the age ranges that the companies put on these apps and games. They give you another level of detail, so you can decide whether these are appropriate for your kids or not. On being kind, I will say this very simply, that we obviously want to encourage our kids to treat others online as they want to be treated. They learn this concept from a very young age from you. From the moment they walk into kindergarten, it's all about how to be a good friend, how to be a good classmate. But on the internet, for the reasons we already discussed, everything we're doing is being recorded. So everything we do adds up to a picture of who we are online. So that's another reason why we always want to treat others with kindness and respect. I like to tell kids that kindness and respect are like a superpower. It's amazing what could happen when you use it. But kindness isn't just about saying nice things. Earlier, I talked about how different families might have different rules. In fact, it's one of the reasons why a lot of conflict and drama starts to happen, especially in those tender years of middle school. Somebody is allowed to already play a violent video game, but the other child is not. Somebody gets to use Instagram and another child doesn't even have a phone yet. Another one is allowed to watch rated R movies or PG-13 movies, and the other one is not. So every family has their own values. Every family is going to be ready to get their kid a phone, to say yes to TikTok at different times. We have to teach our children to respect those differences, okay? If they're trying to organize a get-together and one or two kids don't have a phone yet, but everybody's texting about it, please encourage your children to be inclusive of the children who don't have a phone yet by finding another way to include them. Okay. Respecting others is also about respecting our privacy boundaries. Have you ever had someone post a picture on Facebook that included you or your kids and they didn't tell you? How did that make you feel? Has that ever happened to any of you? It has to me, and it makes for some awkward conversation, but it's really important that we respect each other's privacy. And one thing you can do with your kids is, this happens a lot in middle school when all these kids get onto Instagram for the first time, they get excited. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. The novelty is through the roof. They start taking group selfies and they start posting them, making them their first posts on social media. But what happens sometimes is children will post them because they love how they look, but the other kids don't love how they look in the picture. And all of a sudden, you've got whispering, arguing, and full blown drama starting to play out in middle school. So encourage your kids to do something very simple. When they take a picture, they show it to everyone, say, are you okay if I post this? You good with this? You're okay if I post this? Really, if we all did this, I think we'd be in a better place. And kindness, not just towards others, but towards oneself as well. As I mentioned earlier, it can be very easy to get wrapped up in social media. How does it feel when you post something on Facebook and everybody likes it? How does that make you feel? It makes you feel pretty good. And remember, in teenage years, when you feel good, you feel really good. And when you feel bad, you feel really bad. Everything they experience is multiplied. So very often, some of these social networking sites are designed to play into that. You know, we get an adrenaline rush, a shot of dopamine when we get the like. So we crave more and we want to do more, to get more likes, to get more followers, to get more people to comment on our posts. We've got to be very mindful of this as our children start to traverse the world of social media. And we need to remind them that they are not equal to the number of likes, followers, shares, comments that they're getting online, that their value is worth so much more than that. That's up to us as parents to remind them that that's not a reflection. What people are posting also are not necessarily a reflection of the real world, of their real lives. So let's make sure we remind them they're worth so much more. We can nurture kindness by being supportive when things do go wrong. You know, be prepared as parents and ask yourself, if someone were ever unkind to my child, what would I do? The flip side of that is, what would I do if my child was the one who was being unkind to someone online? So be prepared. Think about those questions. You don't ever have to hopefully go back to the answers, but be prepared. And when you do see good things happening online, share those stories with your kids so they know that not everything on the internet is bleak or negative all the time. I will close out with our last section on being savvy. So just a few tips here. Number one, it's very, very difficult these days to know what on earth you can trust anymore on the internet. What is real and what is not. Someone could easily take your picture and decide that it's their picture and open up an account and pretend to be you. Tricks like doing a reverse image search. If you just go to your search engine and look up reverse image search, you can submit a photo and it can tell you whether or not that's been used in other places. So you could tell if someone is really who they say they are, or they're pretending to be someone else. With regard to things like the news, it's also very difficult to know what you can trust and what you can't. And we work very, very closely with the National Center for the National Association of Media Literacy Education, and came up with this great parents' guide to media literacy. And it is a way that you can teach your kids to pause and ask questions before they believe anything they've seen online. If a headline or a video or a social media post causes you to feel something strongly, that is a red flag. That's a red flag that should tell you to pause and start asking questions. Wait a minute, is this for real? How do I know that this is truth or not? So I encourage you, you'll see later on a link to where you can find that resource. The last thing I will ask is, have any of you ever looked yourself up on the internet? And if you did, let me know in the chat. Have you ever looked yourself up, and what did you find? What did you find? You know, I've found somebody who owns this really cool business in San Diego. I've found somebody who shares my name that you can write in jail. Neither of those people are me. Those people are my cyber twins, okay? But I've also found things that are me, things about me that are public. In my line of work, I've done a lot of public things, so I expected to find those. But if you ever looked yourself up online, or your children, if you look up your kids' names online and found something that you didn't expect to see there, it's good to know so you can have it removed or take action about it. You don't have to go searching. You can do something very simple like setting up a Google alert. Just go to google.com/alerts, as you see in the video here, and just submit any word, phrase, or name that you want to be alerted on. Anytime that matches something that is publicly indexed on the internet, you will receive an email. If you choose to get an email, you can choose to get it weekly, daily, or as it happens, okay? I highly recommend you do this because you may find at best just a cyber twin, someone who shares your name, but your kid or you might want to know that that person exists, so that if you ever have to explain, hey, yeah, that's actually not me. Perhaps you're in a job interview, or your child's considering, you know, applying for a job or for college, they would know this. But you also might find some things that are in fact you, that you don't want made public. I will just repeat, anything posted behind privacy settings, if you're posting stuff on behind privacy settings on Facebook or Instagram, that will not be publicly indexable. So those things will not show up if you search yourself or your child's name online. But there's another reason why this is important, and it's this number. We've been following this study by the Kaplan Institute. The Kaplan Institute are the people who create the test preparation materials for the SATs, other types of standardized tests. And they started asking back in 2014, college admissions officers across the country, beyond the application, would you look up this student on the internet? And the first year they asked the question, 25% said yes. Every year it went up and it went up, and it keeps going up. The most recent study was just published this past February, and 66% of those officers said that they would, if they needed to, look you up. But what's more interesting behind this number is these two numbers. Of those who looked, 57% found something that was not attractive, that convinced them, no, this is not the student we want here. But 38%, which is not a small number, found something that convinced them, this is definitely the person we want here. So I share this with you because it leads us into a conversation about encouraging good uses. Up until this point, we talked a lot about how to protect privacy, what not to do, how to basically stay invisible from other people, from strangers, and how to be kind to others and to oneself. But what about the ways that we encourage our children to learn and master technology in ways that could be good for them and their future? It's that 38% that I think about all the time of if your student looks just like another one online, in their application, what could be a way to differentiate? And this is one of those ways. So how can you encourage good uses of the internet? Well, use it to learn new skills. Your kids might use it to promote a cause they care about or help raise funds for an organization in your community that really needs the help. You can also, there's lots of ways to showcase what they love and what they're good at, what they've achieved. Perhaps they're writers, they could start a blog, and you can keep it password protected for a while and make it public later. Or perhaps they're an athlete and they want to showcase their performance on an app like Huddle. They're an artist and they want to showcase their art and so on. I'm a big fan of contests as a positive use of the internet because contests teach a number of things. Number one, how to operate within a set of rules, a deadline, how to have whatever it is you're submitting be critiqued by other people. And even they may even win or not. But just by learning and entering contests, what a great way to accumulate a portfolio of things that you've done, even if you've never won. I think it's a wonderful way of encouraging good uses of the internet. So with that, I think, I realize there's a lot of content that we covered tonight. And to remind you all that all of it is important. It isn't just about helping our children not be on Xbox for 5 hours a day or making sure that they're not bullying anybody. It really does entail all of these things. And the underlying piece to it all, to support our children to become great digital citizens, is for us as parents to have and to continue to have important conversations with them about how they're using it. It's about encouraging them to use it in positive ways. And it's about being great role models to them as well. So, of all the things we talked about tonight, I'm glad to let you know that we did this fall create a whole new set of modules for kids to use and learn these things themselves. It's called our Cyber Academy, and you can find it at this website, trendmicro.com/internet-safety. And we encourage you to send your kids there. We'd love to get your feedback about these modules. And resources for you as parents, some of which I spoke about tonight, can be found at the same website. I ask you to keep things going. Stay actively involved in your kids' online lives. Many of them are actually seeing the world through things like social media, through YouTube. Have conversations about what they know and how they're seeing the world around them. Communicate not just with your kids, but with other parents in your community about what their kids are doing with technology, what they're learning about through it. And stay up to date by follow us online. You can go to our website to get information constantly. And I ask one favor, that's to do one new thing, something you had never done before tonight. Maybe it's turn on two-factor authentication in Roblox. Maybe it's to set a new rule about technology use. Do one new thing that you had not done before tonight. I know we have one question here, which I will take now. Is it wise to use a search engine to look up your child by name? Are there any privacy concerns with that? So no, there isn't. I don't necessarily have concerns, because if you're going to find anything on a search engine, it means it's already public. The search engine is just letting you know it's already been made public. Now, Google actually announced a way just recently. If you find something when you do a search on Google and you see some information, let's say it's photos about your kid or things you don't want out there in public, you can actually now report that to them and they will remove it from their search engine. I would warn you, though, that that only means it cannot be found on Google's search engine. It doesn't mean it's gone from the internet. You would still need to go to whomever is hosting that image or that content to have it fully removed from the internet. Okay, great. I don't know if there's other questions. I know we're way over time, so I'm going to leave it here with you all. We appreciate you giving feedback through the feedback form that you'll see when you dial out of Zoom tonight. And if you choose to include your email address, you could be one of 5 people to win a copy of Trend Micro Maximum Security. This can protect your laptops, desktops, iPads, phones. It will protect up to 5 devices for a year. So no obligation at all. If you don't want to give us your email address, you don't need to. But if you do, you'll automatically be entered to win a copy. With that, I want to thank Judy and Maria as our interpreters this evening. I want to thank all of you attending from coast to coast and spending your evening with us. My name is Lynette Owens, and it was a pleasure to be with you this evening. If you have questions, my email address, you can reach us at the email address on the screen. If you'd like a copy of tonight's recording, please reach out to the person at your school that organized this event for your school. And if you are that person who organized the event, please reach out to the Trend Micro representative who you were working with, and they will be able to get you a copy of the recording.